Hi, welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. Imagine you can find any photo at any time at the click of a button. We are here to show you how.
So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to our second episode of DIY Photo Organising podcast. Today we're going to be talking about our first golden rule, and that is backing up. So what we're going to cover in this podcast is giving you an overview of why we back up and what do we even mean by doing a backup. There's a few things that we'd like to help clarify with you on that. We're talking about what to back up and how to do a backup, and then we'll go through a few of our best practices and just summarize some of them for you. So jumping right into it, let's talk about why back up. Chantal, have you got some tips and ideas and maybe some stories that you'd like to share with why we even need to talk about our first golden rule in backing up?
Yeah, that's right. Good question. So I think it's pretty obvious, nobody wants to lose data and let alone photos. So we do need to back up. And there is so many stories out there or from people who have lost their photos. I've had clients, one for example, their house was broken into and the cameras were stolen. That was like video cameras, photo cameras, really good ones. And of course the SD cards were still in the cameras. And they had never downloaded the photos that they have taken or the videos. So they've lost all that. And, that included photos of their children, videos of, the first step, the first isn't that. So it's really heartbreaking. Yeah. I've had other clients who had, one I know, their laptop was stolen from a car, again, including photos, and it wasn't backed up, so everything was lost that was on there, obviously. I've just worked with a client who had a hard drive, an external hard drive, that got damaged somehow. I'm not sure how it happened. And we had to talk to different companies to try and restore and recover
which
the
is
hard
costly
drive,
too,
which is
isn't it?
very costly.
Yeah.
They had to spend over $1,000.
Even if they can do them,
they were
sometimes
lucky.
they can't get them back, but
they were
did
lucky
get them back.
to get them back. But it's a very costly exercise. So, backing up regularly is really important, and none of us ever wants to be in that situation, and it is heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
So how about you? Do you know?
Yeah, look, there's definitely examples of why I would be strongly suggesting that people back up. And just even on a personal note, we had just with the Black Saturday fires of 2009, and family member, everything was lost, their whole home and everything. And there was thousands and thousands of slides that had just precious, memories of childhood memories of family members and research and information, a whole range of documents and information that was lost. And that's the thing, we're talking about, all of our memories in different formats. We're talking about backing up of everything. And because that's not just our digital and, we'll go into all of those kind of things. But, yeah, definitely examples. And I think people kind of had that feeling, it won't really happen to me, or I'll get to it. And you hear that and you see that. But, we're really encouraging you that, listening to this podcast, you've obviously got motivation enough to want to get your photos organised. So let's make sure you don't lose them. And so then you can, because it does happen.
It does.
And the loss of phones, you hear, there's definitely phones either been stolen, dropped in water, down toilets, out of the back pocket. There's just, there's such a wide range of stories. And sadly, people almost are a bit nonchalant about the fact, devastating, but it's almost becoming it's something that people kind of expect in a way that something is likely to happen. Oh no, I need to do it, but it just is a bit overwhelming and they don't.
Yeah.
And as devastating as it is, I think because we can so easily take more photos now.
Yes, that's right.
I'll just take more. It's just it has a very different meaning, and I think once you really go to look back and you know that they've gone, it's heartbreaking.
And we've got that saying actually that goes around in the industry. You hear that often, that it's not a question of if you ever lose photos, it's a question of when. So it is going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why we talk about backup, and that is why it's our number one in our golden rules.
Absolutely. So
what do you mean, Chantal? Let's just talk about what we mean when we're talking about a backup, if you can shed some light on that for us.
I'll try to, because it can actually be quite a complex topic, backing up. One thing that I notice often is that people don't understand the difference between synchronizing and backing up. So often I will get the response when I ask people, so do you back up your phone, for example? They would say yes, and then when I actually look at the settings, it's not in a sense backed up, but it's synchronized, which can be a backup depending on the setting. That's where it gets a bit complicated, but it's not the same. So in easy words, pretty much the way I like to look at it, backing up for me is almost like a one-way road. So it's basically copying your data onto another drive to back it up there. And that goes that way. Naturally, if you ever need to restore, you would go back there and do it the other way. But synchronizing is, if we want to use the example of an iPhone, for example, and if somebody has turned on the iCloud photo library, so every photo you take on the phone will automatically be sent to the cloud. And if on your Mac you use the Photos app, that's there by default, and with the right settings, it will download to your Mac automatically from the cloud. So it's all a matter of setting up too. Now, synchronizing means that when you then delete a photo either on your Mac or your phone, it will be deleted everywhere.
Right.
So, and this can't be considered as a real backup. That's not what we mean. And oftentimes people actually confuse the two things and are not aware of the fact that if they delete stuff on either end and they have set up, they're going through the cloud, that they delete it everywhere, and that's another way how we can lose things. So with the backup, that's different. You can't, this can't happen with a proper backup.
Fantastic. So we can talk about how to do that, but that's what we mean as a backup.
And also I need to say that a backup, when we talk about backups today and here, we don't mean a copy-paste exercise. We're talking of, I call them the proper backups. There are different ways to back up, but the most common is probably a so-called archive backup, where you use a system that usually comes with your computer to back up all your files, not only photos, but actually everything, to an external drive maybe, or even to the cloud, and you can set that up in a correct way, but it's not copy paste. That's not what we're talking about here.
And I think that's where people can get into trouble, when they do copy paste and they end up with files everywhere and then they don't know what's updated.
Absolutely, yes. I encountered that with almost every one of my digital photo organising clients. Mostly they did the copy paste and now they're in a big mess. And part of the reason is that they're not labeling the folders correctly. So they would have, a folder called pictures or whatever, and then you find 3 of the same folder, and there's no way of seeing straight
Which
away
is,
whether it's a copy, which is the original, when was the copy done. So it's totally confusing, and then we have to invest a lot of time to deduplicate and find out what is actually the original, what, so it gets really messy.
No copy paste.
And if you ever do, do label your folders correctly, so that it's very clear that it's a copy.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great. So what I think is important for us to help people when they're doing this themselves is to find out what to back up. So what are we talking about here as our recommendation? We're talking about backing up everything in their digital world, not just the photos file.
That's right.
So this is something that we're talking about, backing up everything. And one of the most important things that we are suggesting, and this is why this is our golden rule number 1, is even if it's in a mess, even if you do have the copy and the photos, and then you've got photos 2, and then you've got photos 2 space 2, and you're sort of you're in a mess, obviously, and so you've made a decision to try and find us here at DIY Photo Organising podcast. So you're doing something at doing it yourself. So this is why we're suggesting that you back up everything, and we'll go through about how to do that. But, that is really our recommendation, to back up your phone, make sure the computer's backed up, you back up your hard drives, your USB sticks, your CDs, all the things that you've got any bit of, information that you want to keep that's important, before you do your sorting and your organising and everything else. So when we're talking about a backup, and we'll go through exactly what we're going to talk about, some suggestions of what to use, but we are talking about everything.
Yes.
And then likewise with our photos, obviously that's not just digital. So we also have printed photos.
That's right.
And to do a backup of them, that would be to create a digital copy or even a scan.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk about that as well, but that's what we're talking about. Obviously we hear about the photos, but when we're talking about a backup, we are talking about everything, which would include where if a hub hasn't been created yet, we call that the mess.
Yes.
Lovingly.
In a good way.
And so that's what we're saying here with the backup.
That's right.
So, Chantal, maybe we'll talk a little bit now about how to do this backup and some suggestions and tips so that they can get started on that. The sooner the better.
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned before, it's our top golden rule, so the first one. But before we go into that, have a look through our show notes as well. We have a few links there for you that lead you to some of the companies that we're going to mention, and also I have to say that we're not affiliated with them. It's just for your benefit. So check them out, have a look, and that might help you. So how do we back up? We like to use the 3-2-1 method. And we haven't invented it, but we don't really need to reinvent the rule. So that's pretty much an industry standard that we use. And what it means, the 3-2-1 method, is 3 copies of a file on 2 different devices, and one of them should be off-site. Because there's no point in you keeping 3 or 4 or 5 backups in your house. If your house burns down, it's all gone. So you need at least 1 copy, not at home. So keep it off-site.
What would be the point of having 2 different methods or types of backing up? Why would they do that?
Look, this is because, let's say you create a backup on an external drive. They can be damaged. They can be corrupt without you doing anything wrong. It can just happen sometimes. And also they do have an expiry date. External hard drive, we've been told you can have them for 3 to 5 years, roughly. You know, you might get a bit longer out of them, but you do have to replace them eventually.
I think people mightn't know that, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, we date ours, you know, when we've got clients and things like that. So we date when we first started using them as well. So that's a good habit to get into.
So things can go downhills and things can break or get lost. There's so many different reasons, and that's why we need 2 different devices. So as a possible setup, it could be, for example, that you have the original on your actual computer.
So that's one of our 3.
Yeah, that's one of our 3. So you've got number 1. Then you've got the second copy on a backup that you run on an external hard drive connected to your computer. Yeah. And you might have a third copy of that file in the cloud using a backup cloud system. One that I think we both use and really like is called Backblaze. Mm-hmm. It's really, really easy. I highly recommend it, and I don't often recommend products, but this one I really do.
It is good.
And I use it myself, and I had to restore from it. It's really easy to set up. It can work in the background. So that's one of them. Another that we've already mentioned is external hard drives. Mm-hmm. They're really affordable these days. You can easily get them, you know, in Australia. That would be JB Hi-Fi, at Officeworks, whatever. Yeah. Easy to buy. You could have a NAS, or when you've got a Mac, it's actually included. You can set up your time machine, and this can back up to either your actual hard drive in the computer or to an external drive. And the same works on Windows as well. It just has a different name. It's called File History. And again, you can either back up to your computer or to an external drive.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. So again, we're saying 3 backups, 3 individual independent backups.
Yes.
And 2 of them coming from at least 2 on different types of medium.
Yes. Yeah.
And 1 of them best off-site. So, you know, a relative's house, an off-site storage facility, or even a cloud-based.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. And printed photos?
Yeah, we briefly touched on that before. The printed photos, you know, how on earth do you back them up? In the olden days, as my kids would say, which is not that long ago, you would probably create an actual copy, a duplicate of that photo.
Back to our double
these
prints.
Days, you know, the way to back up printed photos is, of course, to scan them, to have them digitized. And that's not only photos, by the way. You know, there's other things like slides, there's old movie reels and what have you, and they can be converted. There are specialists who offer that service, and it's well worth it. Yes,
definitely. And that's covered in a separate podcast. Just even on scanning, we could probably have about 5 of them. It's another lovely topic.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
So how do you do you want to share how you back up your systems and your photos?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm primarily a Mac user, and I do have a PC, Windows PC as well. So I'm a time machine backup to an external hard drive. So I've got my copy on my computer. I've got my external hard drive, time machine. I actually have Backblaze as well.
Yeah.
And then just for good measure, I have a NAS backup system as well. Yeah. So that's my method. And again, Backblaze is wonderful. And look, just to let people know as they're listening, when you first set up a Backblaze, as we've both experienced, and depending on how fast your internet speed is, you know, it's a lot of data going up, and then it's just the files that have been changed get backed up. So they don't have to re-back up everything over and over again. But that can take a long time.
Yes, a very long time.
You know, weeks and into months occasionally.
Yeah.
Really, it does depend on what you're backing up and what you're choosing to back up.
Yes.
But look, it's a software that is definitely well worth looking into. And
Absolutely,
the links will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you use as your personal backup?
I'm pretty much the same. I use Mac mainly, but I do have a Windows machine. So on Mac, I use Time Machine, and that backs up to an external hard drive. I actually have my photo hub not on my Mac because it's way too big because I include the videos. So I've got an external drive with my photo and video hub, and my Time Machine backup includes that external drive. Maybe I can't remember whether I mentioned that before, but you can set up a backup in Time Machine or File History, including another external drive. You can't. You don't only have to back up your C drive, so to speak. You can include external drives if you have.
That's right. Yeah, I do the same. I do the same with that too. And we'll talk when we get to our golden rule number 3, which is creating a hub.
Yes.
And often we do find that ends up on an external hard drive.
Yes.
So, and when we're talking about our backup of everything, obviously we need to include that external hard drive.
That's right.
So that's how you do
and
yours.
it can be done. And as mentioned, I use Backblaze. And I have had to restore from Backblaze. I've lost a whole notebook, Windows notebook, a few months ago, and it was really easy to restore everything from Backblaze. So I highly recommend it. And depending on your setup, in the default setup, it's actually always on, and it backs up as soon as you turn on your computer. In the background, you can still work. So it's
good. You get a little email if you haven't backed it up for a while. It reminds you that you haven't turned on that computer. Sometimes I don't use my PC as much as my Mac, so it reminds me that I need to do that. So it's good. It is very easy.
It's really worth the effort. Yeah. So
wonderful. So maybe now, I think that's given a good overview of we've covered why we back up, and what we mean by doing a backup. We've talked about what to do, what to actually back up, including our photos and for printed and digital. And we've talked about how to back up. So what are some of maybe the best practices? We've touched on a few, but let's summarise what some of those best practices are for people that are jumping into this and doing it themselves. What's your maybe I'll jump in first. Okay, so
go ahead.
So with our 3-2-1, that really is one of our best practices. And again, it's an industry standard through the industry that we're with, which was appo.org, the Association of Personal Photo Organisers. And so that really is, it's just a good standard practice to get into. And look, once it's set up, then it's done. And I think it's like anything that you're starting new, there's so much information and there's so much out there that you can read and options and things like that. So, which is why, doing, the podcast is just helping people to just get a bit of a summary overview of what their options are. So 3 separate backups from 2 different devices and one of them offsite.
Right.
Our other best practice and other things that we would recommend is when we're talking about this is to back up everything. So not just their photos, and regardless of the mess that it's in, just plug in a device and turn on that Time Machine. We'll go through in those show notes some links as to how to do that. It really is a very simple system. It's a bit of a mystery out there for people sometimes that haven't done that, but really it is something that's well worth just following those steps and giving that a go. So what else would you give as your suggestions for best practice?
In terms of backing up, what I think helps also, especially if you have traveled, maybe you've had 2 weeks away on a holiday, you taken a lot of photos or videos, whatever, or you've had a wedding or a party or a birthday or something, you add these photos to your computer, so then run a backup. It's sometimes, we do say schedule a regular backup, but once a week backup doesn't really do much if you hardly turn on your computer or work on your photos during that time. So you will have to find your own routine, what makes sense to you. I like to back up pretty much straight away after I've downloaded everything from camera cards and phones and what have you. Run a backup before I even start, deleting or renaming or do anything with the photos. Just to have them saved on the computer. And that also means if I want to, I can then delete them on the phone or from wherever they come. But you have to find your own workflow and routine that works for you, obviously. So, and another thing also is with backups, as we mentioned before, hard drives can become damaged over time or suddenly not work anymore, whatever, but we might not even realize. And, we just back up every month and not realizing that it's not really backing up. So from time to time, do check your backup. Go in there, have a look. Is everything there? How does it look like? And actually do try to restore a file or two. And you will see straight away whether, it's still okay, everything works as it should. And it also gives you some practice to actually do a file restore sometimes. It's good to do that. And another note on restoring files that's important to know, you can't restore a file from a backup by just double-clicking it and opening it up. You have to right-click and there's an option, restore the file. So you have to do it that way. You can't just double-click and it's all going to work because it won't. So if you try that and you think it's not working, do the right click and
then choose restore.
So that would be my tips to.
Wonderful. Well, I hope this has given everyone a really good understanding of what a backup is and how to do it and what we're talking about, but why it's so important to do a backup. And just to recap what our golden rules are, we really obviously have started off with golden rule number 1, which is our backup. So we'll also be talking about knowing the why you're looking at doing a DIY photo organising project in the first place. Then we'll be talking about creating a hub and sorting and organising photos and then doing something, taking action, which our first thing today would be to do your backup.
Yes, please do that.
So, exactly. So thanks, Chantal. It's been great. Thank you. As always, we'll look forward to receiving any feedback from people. Please get in contact with us. And until next time, thanks for joining the DIY Photo Organising podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of DIY Photo Organising and found some inspiration, useful tips and strategies to support your photo projects.
We'd love to invite you to pop over to our Facebook page, DIY Photo Organising, and we welcome your questions, feedback and any future topics that you'd like us to cover. If there is someone you'd love to share this with, please click on share to help others take control of their photos too. Remember, have a look through our show notes for links to helpful information. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Simply in Order Photo Organising. And remember, we believe in you and you can do this.